All right, what's up, guys? New podcast episode of Movers and Shakers Unlimited. Host co-creator Brandon Troy, and I'm happy to also have here with me Natasha Williams from the Nerd Element. What's up, Nat?
Hi.
Happy Memorial Day weekend to all of you guys out there. Hope you guys are
Yeah.
enjoying it. Um, I had a fun one, eventful one. I don't know about you, Nat. I don't know if you had a chance to, do anything fun or
Not
eventful. I mean,
yet.
okay, all right. But be that as it may, reason why we're doing, today's episode is getting into, I guess, kind of, I guess you could say, a wrap up of Escape Velocity 2019 Escape Velocity.
hmm
Um, and I wanted to just like we've done before, just kind of go over, things that we liked and obviously, things that could be tweaked. But before we get into that, I'll go into, for those of you that are not familiar with escape velocity, I'll just give you just kind of like their basic, I guess you could say their mission statement or what it's about in essence. Um, So, according to his website, it's identified as a futuristic fair to promote STEAM education within the context of science fiction, using the fun of Comic Cons and fascination of science and engineering festivals. Now, be that as it, considering that mission statement, uh, Nat, I'm gonna throw it to you. Do you feel that it accomplishes that like dichotomy and that like that that mesh of styles, so to speak? Was this your first year, or was it?
Yeah, this was my first year, so I wasn't really sure what to expect. So I knew it was definitely focusing on science fiction and kind of like science in general. Definitely more of a focus than like Awesome Con because I think they kind of like partner up a little bit with the Museum of Science Fiction, so they have like a science section, but this was mostly a focus. Now, there were some panels that definitely were not science fiction related that I went to because, again, they were just interesting. And I think overall, I think the feel of it is definitely sci fi. Um, the educational part of it, there were definitely a lot of like literary panels that had like a lot of educators that did panels discussing various topics like with science fiction, like space opera, and just different topics. And then there's Anime USA that also had panels regarding anime and also science fiction. So I think so.
Okay, all
And then
right,
there was the museum. So yeah, where
true,
you can pretty much take pictures of props and stuff from different shows and movies.
true, fair enough. So this was my second year at Escape Velocity, and um, I've been fortunate not only to enjoy it from the, I guess, the attendee perspective, but even last year I did a lot. Well, I guess not a whole lot, but I did a certain amount of the programming aspect of there was a Q&A that I moderated, that year that was in the field or in the realm of science fiction, so to speak, dealt with. It was a film regarding the paranormal. So shout out to, Eric Myers, director of um, Butterfly Kissing. So, we had a Q&A of that, and we also did, gosh, I'm brain farting. Oh, did the cheesy line. I think it was the
Yeah.
first year we did cheesy line. We did it again this year. A lot of fun. So shout out also to folks at Geeks Night Out.
Yeah.
Um, that's always a fun panel to MC. Considering going back, but I'm going on a tangent. Going to what we were talking about with the mission is it is a unique, I feel, mesh of styles in terms of what they're going for, and I'm actually going to get into that on the later down the line in terms of uh, uh, things that I felt could be tweaked. But in that same regard, I still feel that it's a strength because there aren't a lot of shows out there that seek or are driving to not only provide an educational aspect to kids. Because I mean, this weekend I was really surprised. There were a great deal. I don't know if you were there to um, to see because you only came on Saturday, right? Or were you there? No, you were there Friday. What am I saying?
I was there the entire weekend. What are you talking about? We
I
just
don't know.
didn't see each other that often.
That's
Like,
right. Yeah. But this like Friday, that first day, there were an insane amount of there were a great deal of schools that came,
mhm,
um, for the event. Which, when it comes to like conventions and things of that nature, it's very much on the entertainment side. I feel,
mhm,
and you don't see a lot of that. So it was really cool to have that aspect of education involved with. I mean, shoot, I wish school that me growing up that I was able to go to quote unquote a show like this
well,
and
yeah.
have it as a have it available to me. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to throw shade on a lot of my schools. I had an okay education, and
Well,
went
yeah. I
to.
mean, yeah.
I'm sure we both had an opportunity to do some great things and go on great trips with our schools. But to have something like this is a unique thing to have.
Mhm.
So jumping off of that, I wanted to get into the I guess we can go into the programming next. I know you were saying that you went to some panels with. Can you talk a little bit about what those panels were and what your thoughts were?
Um, well, the one of the panels that I went to was the ethics of AI, which I thought was an interesting panel because it talked about ethics and bias and how there's also always like an initial bias when you're developing something or when you're testing something. There's always that initial bias, and you can't like sometimes those experiments don't necessarily work when you're programming an AI to do something because it's kind of limited, but you have to like branch out and just try and program it to the best of your ability because there's corporate bias, there's um, human bias, like who gets to decide what to, how to program these AIs and what they're doing and how they're like, you know, recognizing voice recognition because there's voices, different shades, different, frequencies. And so with race, gender, what have you. So I just thought it was an interesting conversation. Um, I think that was Friday. And then there's like how tech is being used to help people with disabilities and where to go forward with that. Is that limited? And that was on Friday, and I'm like, why weren't these panels like on Saturday or Sunday? But that's neither here nor there. Saturday, I thought it was interesting that there was a hip hop workshop and a belly dance fusion. um I thought they were great, like performances and whatnot. But the belly dance fusion was dancing to video game music, so I thought that was an interesting tie-in, depending on the video game that they were dancing to. Because I'm not much of a gamer, so I wasn't really recognizing the music, unfortunately. Um, but some of the literary panels, again, we're talking about science fiction, definitely African American authors and Afro futurism, which needs to be talked about because seriously, like we've been talking about speculative fiction for years, and people are just now recognizing that we've been doing this for a while. And me being, ignorant, for me, science fiction was just not something that I was always really interested in. I've started to kind of slowly get into it a little bit more, especially with Afrofuturism, because I didn't really see myself like as as someone that's into science. Like I didn't know a lot of people that were Black that were into science, and just seeing a lot of people that were doing that, and you know majoring in like African American literature or science fiction and all this other stuff. So it was eye opening for me because I'm I feel like I've been brainwashed like to default a certain way, and it's interesting. Also, another panel that I really liked was Godzilla. They talked about Godzilla, which is actually premiering next week, the latest video movie, and they actually talked about the history of it. The historical aspect and why it was made originally was very interesting because it was pretty much the result of Hiroshima, and I didn't know that. Like, it wasn't something that was in my brain, and I just thought that was fascinating. And so there's just panels like that really made me enjoy the con. And I'm glad that they did focus on some of the guests. Like Dominique Tipper from The Expanse was there. She did actually 2 panels, one on Saturday, one on Sunday. I went to both. And the audience asked like really good questions. I also got a chance to interview with her briefly because we had met at Great Philadelphia. So it was nice talking to her. She's really nice. And if you haven't seen The Expanse, you should watch it. And I'm glad it was saved. So shout out to that.
Yeah, it's funny. Like, I have a lot of friends who watch Expanse. Shout out to Chris Fabian, our connoisseur. He swears by that show, and there's just shows out there, and you can attest to this too. Like, it, for whatever reason, like, you really make the effort, and I'm not saying that it's a horrible show. I'm sure it's a great show. You really make the effort, but it's just not
you
for
can't
you.
get into it.
You can't get into it.
Well, okay, so I struggled with The Expanse like about 3 or 4 times, but I had to struggle through the first few episodes before I was committed to it. So unfortunately, you have to like push through sometimes to the episode that clicks for you. And sometimes that's not it may be like way down the line, like season 1 or something. It just depends on the show, but it also depends on how much you're willing to say, okay, let me give it one more episode. So sometimes people 3 or 4, that's it. If you're not interested, you're done. And unfortunately, sometimes it takes slightly longer than that because sometimes the show needs to find its footing. Yeah, I stand for The Expanse, and I'm glad that it got saved by Amazon because it's one of those few shows that does have a lot of diversity in it and a lot of like great female characters, and I'm just glad that they cast who they cast. I not a lot of science fiction features a lot of women of color, so I'm going to support it.
Hey, no, I'm about that. I'm about the diversity. So, like, if it has all of that, that's terrific and that's awesome. So,
Yeah, but you can't get into it. No,
I've tried. I really have.
How many episodes have you tried so far? Is the question.
What you said, like 3 or 4 episodes, and it's so much programming out there. I blame the day and age that we live in with all the content that's out there. Not just with streaming platforms, with the access that we have where we're able to determine when we want to watch a show. So Xfinity, like, sometimes even though I want to watch a show live, we have the luxury now, in the day and age that we live in, that you can just watch it whenever you want. Like,
that's
you don't have to watch it live, or you can stream it live. Like, if you don't even have the actual premium channel like HBO, like, an example, Game of Thrones series finale, I streamed because I just physically wasn't near TV, so I just watched it on my phone.
Which is a whole other conversation, but we'll stick to escape velocity.
Yeah, fair enough. But okay, so you had a chance to go to the panels. Another aspect of it, as we were talking about with the mission portion, is that they add an element of Comic-Con, so to speak, and I feel one element of it that's very that gives you kind of the feeling of Comic-Con, other than the panels, obviously, is what they have, the setup that they have up on the floor. So are you able to, you want to comment on that, and then I can kind of, I guess, add my 2 cents?
Well, okay, so the exhibit hall wasn't as big. For some reason, I was expecting it to be bigger, but maybe because it is a smaller con, the exhibit hall wasn't that big as compared to other conventions that I've gone to. As far as the space, the layout was very similar. They did have tables like all the way around, and then they had like exhibits or, like not so much vendors, but like they had like the Batmobile, the Ghostbusters, all that some stuff in the middle. So I thought the layout was interesting. Um how like I almost didn't find Dominique Tipper's table, but fortunately she was kind of like not too far from the entrance, as well as Gigi Headley, who were the two guests. Um, it, some of the artists were like way back in the back, which I'm a little bit iffy on. And then there were like some authors that are like scattered, like science fiction writers that were like scattered across. And there were some vendors that were not there every day. Like Saturday, Fantastic Forum was like right there at the entrance, and then on Sunday they were not there. They did have the vendor booth for science, Museum of Science Fiction, by the entrance as well, and it was just an interesting layout.
I'll second that. Like it is a small show. We'll get into that too.
Yeah.
But I mean, they had some interesting things there. One thing that immediately comes to mind for me is that they did have a lot of like cool things. Like they had a VR experience that you were able to participate in.
Yeah.
And they had
for a small fee, you were able to do a VR experience.
Yeah.
There was like a tournament. There was also the electronic or electricity museum. They had like little displays.
They had like robots. They had like a robot.
There was like a robot camp too that I
Yeah.
took some video on. That was pretty cool. And the DC Stunt Coalition was there. They did demonstrations like on Friday, but their table was.
I hadn't seen it, but okay, all right.
They had a table.
Okay.
In fact, I interviewed with Penelope and Ricky, who were there Sunday. So yeah, shout out to them. They actually did like a demonstration on Friday, and just Friday, which again was interesting because it was the first day, and that was the only demonstration that they could do, or they had scheduled in this in the programming, I guess. But yeah, like I said, there are a few artists that I saw. There weren't a lot of artists, which, it's still a Comic-Con, but at the same time, because it's mostly focused on science fiction, I'm not sure how much money an artist can really make unless it's science fiction related or is science fiction characters that they're creating art for, or even slightly fantasy, because science fiction and fantasy kind of like intertwine a lot. So I just thought it was interesting, the few vendors that were there.
Yeah, definitely. So it's actually a great segue into some of the things that we felt could be tweaked. I know we kind of commented on it, and I think that's actually a great segue to get into the things that could be tweaked. And I want to say the main. Well, I'll start first with what the mission is, and I feel like it's a very ambitious mission that it has in terms of intertwining these various um, styles or formats, so to speak. And I think it unfortunately in some instances does the show a disservice by doing it by intertwining those things. Now, and I think a great example of that is what you just gave is when there is an opportunity to actually have some vendor there that would otherwise probably be there in any other circumstance, depending on the type of show. They're not there because of the simple fact that they're not really sure that the audience is going to be there. Which I myself, I don't think that is the case, but the assumption is there that they will have the audience because there is such a clashing of formats and styles. So something that could really add a terrific element to the show. I feel that artists or folks that would otherwise come, would be hesitant to come, which is, I think, kind of doing a disservice to the show, where I feel that the show would otherwise benefit from having them there.
Well, there's another aspect to that too. Just the fact that for me, I didn't feel the exhibit hall was super busy. So that's an understandable fear that, different artists would have on a show like this. Like science fiction is really a niche. And so you're kind of limited as far as how much you can really branch out. Now, if it's science fiction and fantasy, because science fiction and fantasy is kind of like you can kind of combine the two sometimes depending on if you're an author or even like creating worlds because there's a scientific aspect to creating a world or world building, just science in general, like how it's made, molecules, atoms, all that good stuff. So again, it's kind of like you said, they're trying to do a mission, but how far can you really go with it?
And I feel like if you're going to do a niche, like stick to that niche, and carry it, let it carry you. Like if you're going to do, because like I said, it's awesome that they had like the 3D experiences, they had the robots that we were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
There's more of that than awesome. Completely embrace that.
Yeah.
But I feel that because there is that meshing or that effort to mesh, so many different things that you know, things kind of get lost in the shuffle versus, just sticking to that niche and really, going moving forward. Um,
Yeah. I just like there's still different aspects, at least for me, for science fiction. There's science, there's like science thrillers. I mean, it's just a lot. And I just like I was really confused as to why there was a hip hop and belly fusion workshop, but I liked going to them because I like those things. And yeah, I just wasn't sure if that was the place for it. Like if there was another convention that focuses on a little bit of everything, then that makes more sense for me. Um, there were some writing workshops, and there was also, I think, some editing workshops. I didn't see too many comic artists because there are some graphic novels that are science fiction related. So I'm just wondering. I didn't really see a lot of vendors like that. There were some like vendors or exhibitors that had like jewelry or something along those lines. Um, yeah, I just don't know.
See,
um,
and I feel that's exactly, how it is, unfortunately, when it comes to, the folks that would come to see the show because don't get me wrong, like this show has a lot of great things. It's just that I feel sometimes, just like you're explaining now, that folks sometimes get confused. Of, okay, what am I gonna, what can I expect from the show? And there's something to be said about that when you're going to any convention, expo, what have you.
mhm,
Don't get me wrong. There's new elements that they add, but there are certain hallmarks that you come to expect because that is something that's getting you to come year after
mhm.
year after year after year. Um,
Yeah, because
and
I mean, they could even add like a gaming aspect because there are video games that are they had the VR, and it's like
more.
just more of that. They did have a gaming area. They did have board tabletop gaming. I think there was like a Dune game that was premiering there, where you could like play against the creators of it. I wish I had gotten some like footage of that, but I guess I missed it. But and there was like a gaming room. Um, I did feel like the flow of where things were was, I think, the most that they need to improve on. And there was like no signage, hardly. So because it took me a while to even find the registration area because the Gaylord Hotel is a big hotel. And
Another great segue, actually.
wait, go
Well, I
ahead.
was gonna say, it's about to say, great segue because the venue. I love National Harbor. I love Gaylord Hotel. Like it's an awesome,
It's
venue
a
space
nice
to use.
hotel.
It's a very nice place. and it's a huge place, as you said. And um, discussing kind of commenting on what you were talking about before on it being a smaller show, there's something to be said about that. And I mean, don't get me wrong, I love smaller events. I know, like not too long ago, I was commenting on how I really enjoy Farpoint. Farpoint
Hmm.
is by no means an Austin Con, a New York Comic Con, or a San Diego Comic Con, but
Hmm.
I still enjoy the show because it kind of like what we're commenting on. It knows exactly what it is. It really, caters to that and adheres to that. And I feel the venue space, complements that and matches that. If
Right.
you're going to have a smaller show, there's nothing wrong with having a smaller show, but I feel that if you're going to have it there, it, you can't have a smaller show at the Gaylord Theater, or Gaylord Theater, jeez, Gaylord Hotel. Um, because I feel that it just further kind of highlights, you know, how niche the show is, and I think this show would still benefit from
Hmm.
being in a different venue space. I don't think the Gaylord Hotel is the right one for for the show.
Right.
And and like I said, there's nothing wrong with it being a smaller show because I love smaller shows. I just feel that maybe by having a smaller venue, um, it will add another element to the show itself.
It would make it a little more intimate. Like I think about Dragon Con, and I know
Right.
it's a huge fan convention, and it's across 5 hotels, including like a building I think for Artist Alley, which I think is a disservice to Artist Alley to be honest, but that's just me. But sorry, I didn't mention that last time we talked about Dragon Con, but it still kind of flows because the hotels are so near each other, and it's the venue, like the venues, the hotels themselves, they stick it to like certain areas so you're able to find them a little more easily after your like initial day. um like again, when I walked into the Gaylord, there was no signs for me to guide me to where I needed to go. Like if I wanted to go to registration, where do I go to registration? There were no signs until I literally got downstairs and I would just happen to be walking in the right direction and saw like a sign that says this is the exhibit hall, this is registration, this is like the panels were in a different direction. I'm like, but where? Like I wasn't sure, and I'm glad I had Friday to figure it out, because if I just had one day, I feel like I would spend way too much time trying to find where I needed to go. So that is definitely something that needs to be improved for sure. Like when you're entering the Gaylord, depending on where you're entering the Gaylord from, because the Gaylord is a big
Has
hotel.
so many entrances. So
So many
like,
entrances. Like because I was staying at the hotel across the street, I went through the main entrance, and there's a lot of stuff going on at the hotel anyway. There's like
other than the show,
other than the show. So there was like an Indian wedding. Like there was just a lot of stuff going on. There was like a proposal that I missed because I had to go to a panel, but there was this proposal that was set up, I think, on Saturday. And I wish I got to see it because I totally would have filmed it. But they had like video and stuff. It was like this grand thing. And I'm just like, but where would I need to go? But the good thing is the panels, at least for the most part, were in the same area, so they weren't as hard to find as the exhibit hall. Once I found out where the panels were, so to speak, where the exhibit hall was and where the panels were was a major disconnect. So, yeah, it just needs to flow a little bit better.
yeah, definitely. So okay, I'm gonna wrap it up. It is still holiday, so to speak. So we'll try to get out of here. Let you get out of here too. Um, so just to wrap up, I guess it's. I like this. I will definitely like the show. I feel like it's a show that has the capabilities of being. It has the tools there to be a really unique experience and unique show.
Hmm.
Um, but having said that, I feel that the venue does the show a disservice because I feel the size of that venue doesn't really match the the show, itself, and what it's, what it really can be.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Other than that, I guess all in all, I would probably just give it like an average score. If I were to grade it, I would say like a C. Um, there's nothing. It, there are a lot of cool things there, but I feel more can be done with those things. I don't know how you feel about that based on all the things that described to me.
Yeah, I feel like the panels, the ones that were definitely science fiction related, I would definitely give like an A. But as far as again like the venue and the difficulty of finding things, and at least initially, and everything else, yeah, I'll probably give it a C. Like there's so much potential for this show, and I think this is like its fourth year. Um, so it's like one of those things where you want a con to succeed, um, but you're hoping that they can get there eventually before they may have to no longer do it. Like because was it their Doctor Who convention that like canceled at the last minute because
Yeah.
which was unfortunate.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hate when a convention doesn't make it, like, but there's like a, what do you call it, there seem to be a lot more cons to choose from, and so
And I feel like that's exactly the problem. Going back to what I was saying is, it's great to have this ambitious stance of saying, okay, we're going to mingle, this format and this format and this format. That's great, but just know that you really have to, push the limits of that, because otherwise, you just find yourself just with something that doesn't really benefit to its maximal potential from either. I
mhm.
feel. Um, so yeah, as I said, like it's a show that I feel can be provide a unique experience and be a unique show among um, all the shows. Like I know we were just kind of commenting on it now briefly. All the shows that we now have here in the East metropolitan area, we have like an
Yeah.
embarrassment now. It's crazy.
Yeah, no,
Uh,
I feel
that
like
didn't
I
used to
don't
be the
even have to.
case.
That didn't used to be the case, and I feel like I don't really need to travel to the West Coast. But that's a whole nother, again, conversation.
uh, uh, uh.
Um, but I think for me, I like being entertained, and I like a little bit of everything. So for me, a more general con will work better for me. But I have an interest now in science fiction, or just science in general, just to branch my knowledge, and just to I'm just curious about it, like, in kind of sticking myself, kicking myself just for not being interested like way back when. But my interest lying in create more creatively. So there's that. That's how my brain works. Um, so yeah, would I go again? Yes, because I think the panels that I went to were very interesting. But again, like you said, the venue, they just need to make some improvements, and maybe the timing of it too. Memorial Day weekend.
We didn't even get into that, but
I
golly, yeah.
I don't know, but you don't want to be in competition with another major con. So I didn't think there were any really major cons this weekend anyway. So
And then on top of that too, and then I'll close is uh, and thank you for bringing that up, because I meant to bring that up too. Like it's really tricky to have a show during Memorial Day weekend. And I don't know if it's because for those of you that are out there that are not familiar with some of the behind the scenes things that happen with shows, expos, what have you, hotels play such a huge role in the type of like negotiating power and leverage that a show can have.
mhm.
And if a lot of times, and I have no way of knowing this for sure. I'm just making a theory. So don't go out there and say, oh, this must be fact. I have no like proof of this. I'm just making a general statement. Is a lot of times when a show is placed in that difficult position of getting a certain weekend, and you're kind of questioning, well, how come you're gonna pick this weekend? How come you're gonna pick that weekend? It's because a lot of times when they're blocking off a lot of those that the hotels or the stays for their attendees is that it's not at the number that it needs to be, and
Mm-hmm.
when it is at the number that it needs to be, a lot of times a show, an expo, a Comic-Con, what have you, they have the license and have kind of the ball or the leverage to say, hey, we don't want to put it our show on this weekend. We want to put it on this weekend. And if another show is there that doesn't have that, they kind of get pushed to the side, and that show that is able to guarantee that amount of revenue is allowed to take that spot. So I don't know. But be that as it may, again, like I said, I'm gonna let you go, Nat. But before I let you go, you tell people where they can find you.
Okay. Check out our website, www.thenerdelement.com. You can find us on all forms of social media as The Nerd Element. If you want to follow my personal Twitter, I'm at WillCat12. So yeah.
And I know we were talking about the embarrassment of shows that we have. Are you going to any upcoming shows that you're able to plug now? Or
I am planning on going to BlurCon, but that's in July.
no All Star?
I thought about it, and as much fun as I had last year, it's just not happening this year.
Fair.
And school is starting back up for me that same weekend, so that too. It was a combination of I wanted to get excited, but I wasn't anymore. Don't ask me why. I really can't explain it. It's weird, but also just school summer semester was starting up for me, so I'm like, yeah, I want to concentrate on that versus having to worry about going to a con and worried about homework. So yeah, the BlurCon, I kind of have a groove, and I actually am interested in going. I'm still excited about BlurCon.
Cool, awesome. So yes, let me see, calendar wise. July, I will be in San Diego Comic Con, folks. So I will be there
For the 50th anniversary.
For the 50th anniversary. I'm so looking forward to it. Yeah,
I know. Have fun for me.
I will. But I will be there. Let me see what else. Still iffy on Dragon Con, but I will be at planning on going to Baltimore Comic Con.
I'm still iffy on that. I'm kind of on the fence, but I may go. I'm just not sure yet.
Yep. And New York Comic Con in October. And there's another show that just keep it locked. Should be interesting coming in November. I will tell you more about it. Some interesting aspects of it that should be cool, not just with the show, but with Movers and Shakers Unlimited. So
okay.
Keep it locked on that. But yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Brandon Troy ENT. Instagram is similar, but slightly different. Brandon Troy _ ENT. Make sure you like us on Facebook, obviously. Follow us on Twitter. We have Movers and Shakers on Twitter as well. Move and Shake UNLTD. And yeah, I suppose that's it. Until the next show, I'll probably try to do a wrap up of San Diego Comic Con in about when we go to that show.
I mean,
I'm sorry,
follow
I'm really
news.
rubbing it in that. I'm really rubbing it in.
No. I mean, I'm sure I'm going to be following stuff anyway, so I could like comment on what's happening, like what I'm hearing on the outside.
Love to have you back.
Outside looking in, kind of a thing. But I do have people that are going to be there. It's just not going to be me.
So
and plus, of course, as someone that's been there, so I mean.
I mean, you're more than welcome. Like when we do the wrap up show, you're more than welcome to come back on the show. We can, I can kind of geek out with you on all the cool stuff that happened. But other than that, also, I forgot. I believe we will have a presence at GalaxyCon in Richmond. I believe that's this coming weekend. May have we may have a presence there, so I'll keep you guys posted. Just be on the lookout for that. But I just wanted to let you guys know, thanks for checking out a lot of the stuff that we've been having. I've been trying to make. There've been some minor changes here and there in the format of how we like put out content. You can still expect interviews and all those things, but we're gonna try to make more of an effort to, give you some things as like right in the moment as they're happening. So we'll be doing a little more live Facebooking between panels at our con. So be on the lookout for that. That should be interesting at San Diego. I don't think I've done it at San
Oh
Diego.
Lord, good luck with that.
Yeah. But yeah, no.
Yeah, definitely after panels, because you can't really do it during a panel because they're kind of like iffy on that.
Oh no, that's what I meant. Like
okay.
between panels, because I'm gonna be too interested in what they're gonna be showing.
True.
I'm not gonna like do any Facebook live, but
yeah.
But yeah, no, I'm planning on having it between panels and maybe after a panel day. They don't really give us a lot of like wiggle room between panels, so should be interesting. I think that's it. Other than that, and again, guys, happy Memorial Day. Hope you enjoy your weekend. Get some rest, and guess I'll see
Eat
you
some
guys
good
soon.
food.
Eat some good food. Yeah, that too.
Cookout food, because this is cookout day.
Mine was yesterday, so
okay.
yeah, this is my chill day, so to speak. But be that as it may, guys. Brandon Choi, again, thank you, Nat, and see you guys soon.
All right, bye.